The director of Godzilla Minus One has explained how his creature is different from the MonsterVerses. Let me know in the comment section if you've seen Minus One and what are your thoughts on it. But before I call for Big Man Japan to come and save us whilst Godzilla breaks through the water, there was a lot to unpack there, but why did this monster have a comb over? Anyway, I'd like to say hello guys and gals, I'm Nick, and welcome to 30's Feedback. So, the movie is Toho's 33rd Japanese language installment in the franchise, following Godzilla striking a war-torn Japan just a few years after the end of World War II. Although it has been released at a time that the American franchise known as the Monsterverse, which features Godzilla, Mothra, King Kong and more, is still active and in the middle of running Monarch Legacy of Monsters on Apple TV+, Godzilla Minus One establishes its own unique continuity separate from any other movie or show. Letterboxd recently shared an interview with director, writer and visual effects designer Takashi Yamazaki on the weekend of the Godzilla Minus One American release. When describing the differences between the American and Japanese Godzillas, Yamazaki shared that the point of the MonsterVerses Titan is that he's a really powerful monster. However, he compares the Japanese kaiju to a malevolent destructive god. He also says his version is used as a metaphor, most frequently for nuclear weapons and war, though his could be seen as a COVID-19 metaphor. Here's what he said. The point of international Godzilla is that he's a really powerful monster, but a Japanese Godzilla is halfway a godlike creature in many ways. Not necessarily a religious god, but more like a Japanese god, a malevolent and destructive one. He's a metaphor for nuclear weapons, war. You could view him as COVID in this film, the nuclear power plant in Shin Godzilla, and that metaphor for these incidents is important to a Japanese Godzilla like this. I think we all remember the COVID times, don't we? As Yamazaki points out in his interview, the American Godzilla has a different function in the Monsterverse. In that franchise, he is viewed as a force of nature who can essentially sense when the Earth is under threat and needs to be put back into balance. This is somewhat similar to the way the monster functions in the 1970s run of Japanese Godzilla movies, which typically feature a new monster attacking Japan, followed by him emerging from the sea to battle with it before going back home at the end of the movie. Nothing like classic Japanese Godzilla. However, the more serious Godzilla movies from Japan typically function as a direct metaphor for recent Japanese disasters. The original 1954 movie blended two real-life incidents to create a potent and horrifying movie about unchecked destruction. The first incident was the crew of the fishing boat Lucky Dragon No. 5 developing radiation syndrome due to nearby nuclear testing, with the second being the lingering spectre of the 1945 nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 1984's The Return of Godzilla harnessed a similar relevant metaphor about the escalating Cold War tensions between the US and the Soviet Union. The Japanese Godzilla franchise continued to blend powerful metaphors with the kaiju's rampages, including 2016 Shin Godzilla tackling the then recent Fukushima nuclear power plant accident. The fact that the Godzilla -1 box office has broken multiple foreign languages records in the US shows that there's a wide audience for this version of the creature, even outside Japan. While it can't compete on the blockbuster level of the MonsterVerse in the domestic arena due to its more limited release, the fact that the world is still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic seems to have provided the story of a new Japanese entry with effective, near-universal potency. Sort of like mass hysteria.